big terms we're going to learn today. And we're going to be using these terms throughout the entire year, so you got to get them down. Your first one, perpendicular lines. Two lines that intersect to form right angles. Perpendicular lines are lines that intersect to form right angles. What's the degree measure of a right angle? 90. All the ceiling dividers are perpendicular to each other where they intersect because they form nice 90-degree angles. The lines in the bricks, perpendicular because they form those right angles. Okay. This upside down capital T, that's your symbol for perpendicular. You know how for parallel, we use two parallel lines. For perpendicular, whoops, you use an upside down capital T. Okay. In your image there, we have line AB intersecting line CD and forming a right angle. Bless you. We would say then that line AB is perpendicular to line CD. An upside down capital T is your symbol for perpendicular. Know how to use it, know what it means. We're not going to be writing perpendicular out. Perpendicular. Is there only one right angle? Bless you. How many are there? 4. You only have to mark one. You don't need to mark all 4 of them. Okay? Killer. Number 2. Perpendicular bisector is a line, segment, or ray, bless you, that's perpendicular to a segment at its midpoint. Perpendicular bisector is a line, segment, or ray that's perpendicular to the segment at its midpoint. Your segment AB. Okay. A perpendicular bisector can be a segment, call that segment DE. It could be a ray, ray DE, or it can be a line, line DE. It can be any of those 3. That's perpendicular to the segment. So how do I show that my bisector, ED, is perpendicular to the segment AB? What's it mean to be perpendicular? Make a 90-degree angle. So that's what you do to show that. You put the right angle symbol there. Okay? To be perpendicular means to put a right angle. Okay? It intersects the segment at its midpoint. So where they intersect, we'll call this point M. That's the midpoint of AB. What does that tell us about AM and MB? They're the same. They would be congruent. Good. Okay. Since it's intersecting it at its midpoint, we're going to say that the line bisects the segment. Bisect. The prefix bi means to. Sect means to what? Dissect in science, what do? Cut it, right? Don't you cut the frog up when you dissect a frog? Sect means to cut. So to bisect, you're going to cut into 2 congruent parts. So a perpendicular bisector is going to form a right angle, and then it's going to bisect the segment, cut it into 2 congruent parts. Okay? Bisect, cut into 2 congruent parts. Good. Third term, an angle bisector. An angle bisector is a ray that divides an angle into 2 congruent angles. Bless you. Bisect, cut into 2 equal parts. If you're going to bisect an angle, you're going to have 2 equal angles. Bisect a segment, you're going to have 2 equal segments. Here's angle ABC. An angle bisector is a ray. There's ray BD. That divides the angle into 2 congruent angles. How would I mark that the angles are congruent? the little curvy things, right? There. When you put those two congruent marks in there, we can automatically say then that ray BD is bisecting angle ABC. It's cutting it into two congruent angles, two equal parts. It's cutting it in half. You have to get into a habit of marking your pictures. If you see the perpendicular symbol, then you better have a right angle marked somewhere on the picture. If you see the word angle bisector or the words angle bisector, then you better be marking two angles congruent. Okay? Marking the pictures are going to help you. Questions on those three terms? All right, let's see what happens when we put them into play here. So number one says ray KN bisects angle JKL. The measure of angle JKN is 5x minus 25, and the measure of angle NKL is 3x plus 5. We've got to find x and a bunch of angle measures. We're going to start by drawing a picture. Start by drawing the angle. Draw angle JKL. If it's angle JKL, which letter is at the vertex? Okay, good. Doesn't really matter where you put J or L from there. Just pick a side. Ray KN is going to bisect this angle. Ray KN starts at which point? K, then it goes towards N. There it is. When you see the word bisect, you have to start thinking, I gotta mark something. Okay, if we're bisecting an angle, what are we doing to the angle? Cutting it in half, making two congruent angles. Well, if KN is the one that's doing the bisecting, then angle JKN has to be congruent to angle NKL. And you want to mark that on your picture, that those angles are congruent. All right, now we're going to take what else they give us. Let the measure of JKN equals 5x minus 25, JKN. And the measure of angle NKL is 3x plus 5. Okay, we have to solve for x, which means we got to come up with an equation with these expressions. Maddie? Why would you set them equal? Exactly, that's exactly what it is. 5x minus 25 equals 3x plus 5. The angles are congruent, which is the same as saying they're equal. So you're going to set the expressions equal. 5x minus 25 equals 3x plus 5. Use your algebra skills. You want to bring 3x to the left or 5x to the right? 3x over. So then we have 2x minus 25 equals 5. Add 5 over. 2x, oops, just kidding, add 25 over. 2x equals 30. Divide by 2, and x is equal to 15. All right. There's the first part, solve for x. Then it also says solve for the measure of angle JKN. Well, how are we going to figure out the measure of angle JKN? Yeah, substitute 15 in for x. So we're going to do 5 times 15 minus 25. That's 5 times 15. Minus 25? 50, good. So the measure of angle JKN equals 50 degrees. Now it says to find the measure of angle NKL, which is what? Yeah. The measure of angle NKL is also 50. You shouldn't have to substitute because we marked them congruent to each other. And then the last one, the measure of angle JKL is 100. You're using your angle addition postulate there. Measure of one angle plus the measure of the other angle equals the measure of the total angle. If you see the word bisects, then you either need to mark something congruent. If you're bisecting an angle, then you got to mark two angles congruent. If you're bisecting a segment, you'd mark two segments congruent. Bisect, cut into two congruent parts. All right, number 2. If you haven't started, I think most of you have it here. angle AWB is being bisected by ray WR. Remember, if you see that word bisect, you have to mark something congruent. In this case, we're getting two congruent angles, cutting something into two congruent parts. Then it tells us that the measure of angle AWR equals x, and the measure of angle BWR is 4x minus 48. We have to find the measure of an angle. Well, before I can find the measure of the angle, I have to find the value of x. So what should I do with my expressions to find the value of x? Sarah? Yeah, set them equal to each other. 48. Subtract 4x over. 1x minus 4x is negative 3x. Divide by negative 3, and what do we get for x? 16, good. AWB, bless you, is this whole thing. What are we going to do to find it? Oh, that's fine. Then you subtracted 1 over. You got the same thing. You don't like negatives. Yeah. That works, yeah. Substitute it in. If x equals 16, what's AWR going to equal? 16, which means RWB has to be, which means the measure of angle AWB has to equal 32 degrees. Good. Anytime you tell me the measure of an angle, you got to put measure of the angle. It's just notation. Just like you capitalize the first letter of your name. It's notation. It's just what you do. It's what we do in geometry. Unless you're Tyler, maybe you don't capitalize the first letter of your name. Okay, good. All right. Number 3, segment XZ is the perpendicular bisector of segment AB. There's 2 parts to this one. We're going to do each one individually, or like separate. Segment XZ is perpendicular to AB. What does it mean to be perpendicular? That's what you got to put on your picture then. Put a right angle somewhere in there. If you see the word perpendicular, then you have to know it means make a 90, so then you put it on your picture. You only need to put it in one of the corners or one of the angles, but how many right angles exist there? 4. All of them are right angles. Good. Okay? And then it says segment XZ is the bisector of segment AB. What's it mean to bisect again? To intersect at the midpoint, to cut into 2 equal parts. Okay? So if XZ, the vertical segment, is bisecting AB, the horizontal one, at its midpoint, what would I know about AC and CB? They're the same. Mark them congruent. If you see bisect, there's got to be something congruent. The first 2, we're bisecting an angle, so we made the angles congruent. This time we're bisecting a segment, so I'm going to make the segments congruent. Okay. We have to find the value of x and then the length of the 2 segments. Are my expressions representing angle measures or segment measures? How do you know it's not angles? But how do you know that? But it says it's perpendicular. And doesn't that mean angles? If they form those right angles, perpendicular? So why can't we say 6x plus 3 equals 90? How do you know that, though? Because there's no degree symbol after the expression. Good, because there's no degree symbol after the expression. Good. Because sometimes, like that little 6-question thing I gave you, I had like parentheses 2x minus 15, and then I put a degree symbol. Then I knew I was talking about the angle. If there's no degree symbol, then we're talking about the segment. Good. All right. What should I do with the 2 expressions then to find x? Set them equal to each other, because we marked the segments congruent, which means equal. So we're going to say 6x plus 3 equals 2x plus 15. You want to bring 6x right or 2x left? 2x left. 4x plus 3 equals 15. Subtract 3 over. 4x equals 12. Divide by 4, and what's x equal? 3. And now I have to find the length of AC. What are we going to do to find the length of AC? Yeah, substitute 3 in. What's 6 times 3? 18 plus 3. We have to find the length of CB. How long is it? Do you have to really substitute it in? No, because they're congruent. Because it's not an angle, it's a segment. How about, what would be the length of AB? 42, good. Questions? Okay, get into the habit of marking your pictures. If you see the word bisect, then I better see either 2 angles congruent or 2 segments congruent when I walk around. If I see perpendicular, then you should put a right angle somewhere on the picture.